I've known Tim for probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years now. And have done some work in partnership with Butte County, where he was the superintendent at the county office, which is a different way of saying an ESD-like infrastructure down in California. We were in partnership around scaling multi-tiered systems of support, and so I've known him for a long time, and he's a great guy. And yet I know that when specifically the Camp Fire down in Northern California back in 2018 hit, Tim and many others were instrumental in supporting schools and districts and communities, and most importantly kids, through the devastation and the initial and then what came later. And so literally put a call out to Tim like 2 days ago, and it was like, yes, when do it as quickly as you can. I mean, there's the fact that, Tim, you were willing to pick up the phone and take the call and move into action and bring some people and some resources together is just awesome. We so appreciate it. In a second, I'm going to have Tim introduce himself and give you a little bit more of his background and his team, but I'd love why don't we start with Todd. Todd, just talk a little bit about Santiam Canyon, and both in terms of the district size, et cetera, but then also the context and kind of where you find yourself today after the devastation with the fires.
Thanks, Matt. Good to see some familiar faces here. So Santiam Canyon, we are east of Salem, rural, about 600 students total. We encompass a lot of small communities: Mill City, Gates, Detroit, Idana, Marion, Forks. Sections of our district got hit really hard. Mill City, where our schools are located, thankfully was in the city part, was one of the areas that was relatively spared. So schools are still there, heavy smoke, but towns like Gates, pretty much gone. Detroit, pretty much gone. And a lot of those in between, they're not in the cities, but county areas, the houses back in the woods, randomly here and there, a lot of those are gone. We're still under level 3 evacuation for our entire district. So our families are still scattered all throughout the state right now. So we're still under the process of even locating people. We've been trying to get info out to people that we've made contact. I don't know, with, I'd say maybe 3/4 or maybe 2/3 of our families. Some of them we just can't find or can't get responses back. We do have some casualties in our area. None are students that we know of. A lot of homes gone. We had about 10% of our staff have lost homes. A lot of our staff come from different areas like Staten and Salem and such, so they weren't as impacted. But that's a lot of our instructional assistants who are the people in town, and some of our teaching staff. So loss of homes there. We do have a survey out to families, and I don't know, we have over half have responded back, and the question of, do you have a home to return to? 68% have said yes, they do. 20% no, and then it's about another 10% or so that just don't know. So we could be looking anywhere from 20 to 30% of our kids without homes coming back, and some of them, the ones that are coming back, are going to be coming back into, they have a house, but everything around it is gone. So we thought mental health was an issue with COVID. Holy smokes. What these kids are about ready to come back to is going to be pretty devastating. And it happened in the middle of the night too. So a lot of these kids were just ripped from beds and thrown in cars and left. I think we have a fairly decent response plan ready. Partially because we have time, because our families aren't even here. Like we're trying to, one of the questions we asked our families was, do you have even a safe, stable place to be right now? And, we got about a dozen responses of no, that we've been able to connect out with those families to other outside resources to try and get them stable places. But right now, because we're still under evacuation, thankfully, I have some ways to sneak my way up in there. So I get up there every day and get into the schools and check things out and help assess situations. But, once our families come back, that's when the work is going to start. We've got some mental health stuff underway, prepped. We've got stuff. Oh my gosh, like I almost am to the point where I can't handle semi-loads more of stuff being donated in. But it's a great thing. Donations coming in, cash donations. So I think we're starting to put together the infrastructure for relief. And it's funny because like right now, like instruction is almost one of the last things. It's the last thing on my mind right now. It's all about just getting these kids prepped and ready to be able to learn. So that's all the work we're doing right now. I don't know if there's any other questions or.
You're on mute, Matt.
Matt, can't hear you.
And the one thing I will add about Todd, just again for our friends from Southern California, or excuse me, from Northern California, Todd grew up in the Gates community, and he mentioned that I think of the 6 different parts that make up Santiam Canyon, Gates was one of the communities that was pretty much leveled, and so I know there's a personal toll in terms of where Todd grew up specifically. I'm going to push it to let's go Brent and then Tiffanie, just on my screen. So Brent, if you could just give us a sense of who you are and talk a little bit about your district, and then Tiffanie will come to you, and then we'll get going with Tim.
Thanks, Matt and Todd and everybody on this call that are affected by the devastation. Just condolences go out to you all and your families and your staff. It's definitely something that is going to be a long-lasting impact, both emotionally and just rebuilding our communities. But I'm Brent Barry, Superintendent of Phoenix Talent Schools, and just a little bit kind of about where we are, and then I'll turn it over to Tiffanie, Assistant Superintendent, who's out in the field right now. But we, how that Alameda fire just really ripped through our City of Talent and City of Phoenix, and devastated. I think the count is up to about 2,400 units in those 2 communities, which is a lot of trailer parks and mobile home parks, and just really our most vulnerable population that were, struggling pre-COVID, and then it was compounded by, our COVID, learning and circumstances with that, and now the devastation of flattened homes and just really ash. I mean, and driving through those communities, it really looks like a different planet. I've driven through there almost every day, and it's still just, 8 days later, it's just a really just shot to the gut and to the heart about looking at full trailer parks that are just decimated. So, and thinking about those families. So it's going to be another kind of round 2 of emotion as we start bringing people back into our facilities. The outpouring of support has been just incredible, from resources to donations. And Todd, I feel your pain as well on just the sheer amount of clothing donation that really we just put a stop to it. It's great, but it's actually starting to become a burden for our staff. So, but the cash donations and the gift cards are like gold right now. Especially to Fred Meyer, say, they can get baby wipes, they can get food, they can get camping equipment, they can get gas. So those kind of multi-use cards are like gold, and we've had probably $50,000 worth of gift cards donated. We're really kind of finding what our role is, our next role is. We are looking to, and I echo your thoughts, Todd, as well. School and distance learning is, really kind of on the back burner right now. We do feel like we've connected with 95% or so of our families, and know they're safe. They may not have the easiest access to Wi-Fi or technology. We lost thousands of Chromebooks that we had just delivered the day before, routers and things of that nature. But we do have a team set up that will make sure that we have space and internet available for those families. So we're going to, our high school especially, that obviously with credit attainment, we're going to try to get up and running next Wednesday and really see where we are. We've really got to balance the, the predictability and the routines and the support that we need for families when a traumatic event or trauma happens, and the equity piece of the family or kids that can't really access distance learning at this point. And it's going to be distance learning. We're throwing comprehensive distance learning, what it's called. We're just going distance learning. Comprehensive is going to come way down the road. So we're just trying to survive and connect right now. So I'll leave it at that. Tiffanie, an amazing person who's out in the field, is traveling miles and miles around. She maybe can share about some of the partnerships that just have cropped up and how we can serve our families specifically at Phoenix Talent. So thanks for the time. Again, our condolences to everybody that are really drastically impacted by this.
Thanks, Brent.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffanie. I'll echo Brent's condolences. This tragedy just wiped our state, and I'm very sorry. Yeah, let me know if you can't hear me, because I am out at the evacuation site, our main site that our county has put together. Today, we're since this was declared a national emergency, FEMA is starting to step in. So we're kind of starting a new phase of how we support our families navigate social services. So we're out here, we provide childcare as a school district and just some therapeutic play activities while parents can navigate the social services that are available here, or just need a break, or for our families, our kids that are sheltered here in the trailers, tents, or in the cots in the main buildings. So that's what we're doing now, although we have some other sites where we have outreach to some like pods of families where we know they are connected. Some of our families left to the Willamette Valley or other places, but we were able to connect with large groups of people that are in shelters or are doubled up in other communities. Happy to answer any other questions. Todd, I know you're starting where we've been just a few days ago, but each day feels like a year, I think. Thanks for being here, and we hope to learn a lot from you all.
Thank you, Tiffanie. And I'm gonna turn it on over to Tim and take it away. And this isn't really intended to be a Q&A for the collective everybody. It really is about the team that Tim has put together that's going to be presenting, and really Tiffanie, Todd, and Brent. This is about your time. All of us sitting around this are just going to be listening in and figuring out how we might best support you with the information that comes from our friends from California. So Tim, it's all you.
Hey, thanks, Matt. So with me is Casey Taylor. She's a superintendent principal of a charter school up in Paradise. And behind me is Mike Walsh, who was our board member at the county office and also the state school board president of all of California's school boards. So you have two people who have been locked in on multiple tragedies over the past couple of years. Just quickly, the campfire, just to summarize, and we're not doing like comparison of how big, but we lost 5,000 homes within 3 to 4 hours. The town just extremely blew up. We got our kids evacuated miraculously, 3,200 kids off that ridge within hours. So it's been a long process. And then within that same county, a crow's flow across the canyon. We just lost Berry Creek School District in the whole town. So we they're back in there. I was the county superintendent in charge when that fire hit on November 8th. And with 82 deaths and a complete devastation of multiple communities, we've unfortunately have a lot of experience, and we're here to help you guys. And everything that we've heard from the leaders, the two superintendents in particular, and the assistant sup, we're whispering over here. This brings a bad feeling in our gut because it resonates again. So we're going to do 2 or 3 things for you. In California, I have 5 districts, a lot like Todd's right now. I'm now the executive director of small rural schools in California. We have about 550 schools. I say we had about 40 to 45 districts that were evacuated within the past month. 5 that have been really lost most of their town. Berry Creek lost their entire school district. So we're with you. And what Todd and Brett, what you were saying, we're going to throw some heavy stuff at you, but we're small districts. You guys don't like fluffy stuff. So we're going to be very blunt with you and give you some tips. And Casey's going to be very, give you some really good, sometimes it's a little early to talk about real deep trauma, but I feel that we've made mistakes not telling the leaders what's coming up in your cycle of trauma. Then Mike will wrap up talking about really how you work down with the Oregon Department of Ed and statewide with your boards and all that. So I'm going to share the screen real quick. And again, we don't want to make this a one and done. I can't see can you expand that out? Sorry. Hit the little button down here. There we go. You guys see that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we, up front, first and most, Matt, you don't make this a one and done discussion between us and you, right? That's part of the struggle right now in California is we're not getting together with the mostly impacted. So I'm pressing CDE hard, or I'm gonna do it myself to have, if not daily meetings, at least every other day to keep in communication so you don't go crazy. Really, there's 3 stages of a crisis, you guys, real quick. And this applies to COVID also, but in a wildfire, it's much more, I think, intense. You guys are in the recovery stage, and then there's a restore stage, and then the real hard, and those are actually, the recovery stage might be the easiest stage, to tell you the truth, Todd. As you bring kids back and restore your community, that is a very difficult stage, and the rebuild stage is a 10-year, which is the most difficult work. So I think in this restore stage, you're trying to put out fires. I'm going to give you 10 tips at the end of this also, but get away from donations, get away from anything. The only thing you should be doing is making sure that your kids and staff are safe. So whatever time you're putting in, one of the best things you can tell your community is all staff and students are safe and they're in temporary housing. I know that's hard, Todd. I know to you, Brett, where else is out there. But that is the key role, and you get out of your lane. Your lane and your goal is to get students back in school. So we use this philosophy, we use this term over and over, stay in your lane. You're gonna have to take some media things, you're gonna have to do this, but you're gonna have to primarily stay in your lane, and you are a first responder yourself right now. So, you're not a district superintendent, you're a first responder, and you need to act like that, which means safety, security, recovery. Really, you're not even really thinking too much about when kids are getting back into school. You're just focusing on that, and you're getting things organized. And you have to tell your board, I don't know how you guys operate in Oregon, but you got to tell board members, I don't have time to call you guys all the time. I am the commander in chief, let's say, of the situation. I will let you know what I can do, but I have to make sure we are getting back to safety. Okay, so that's a different role we've always played as a superintendent. We usually have to do everything in small districts, which I'm going to help you with to help delegate. But as a leader, that is your number one thing in the recovery stage. The recovery stage is the stage where all the firemen get all the kudos and all the people doing the work around there. And it's really a time where you're going to not sleep at all. You're going to work 20, 22 hours a day. But really, as the role of the superintendent, you got to think what my role is different right now. And I hear you guys are doing those things. That's good. But you got to make sure you can find those kids. That's so important. And you're not alone. I have people 2 weeks into their fire that are still looking for kids because their computer burned up and they can't find access to their emails and, or cell phones, or the family's lost all their cell phones. So we still have people scrambling to find where everybody's at. And people scatter to get away. Just some reality as you go in to the recovery stage. This is hard, you guys, because I'm not a guy who goes to counseling, but don't take trauma lightly. I'm going to be. My sister lost her house in the Santa Cruz fire, and we checked her into rehab yesterday. She had a total mental breakdown, and so here I am helping everybody throughout the country. And I forgot my own sister and her wife who lost her house. It just, the COVID plus that put her over the edge. And I'm driving down to go see what I can do. But she's going to be fine, but trauma is very real. Casey's going to really enlighten you and give you some real facts, what we know about trauma in a wildfire. And the biggest bullet, and I'll go back to my top 10, you guys need to get yourself some help. You cannot be a small school district superintendent without a lot of help. And we're going to talk to you about how you get that, because your charge is to get kids back to school. You're not the one who's going to run the school when they come back. And I'll talk more about that, how critical that is, and how very few leaders listen to me on that, because they're a little stubborn, right? Of my 12 people that I'm working with, only one, possibly two, have actually listened to that about getting themselves some help from people who are not invested in the fire. And all I can tell you on that is when you watch firefighters battle a fire, they have a command center where the locals are making very critical decisions, but they have dozens of people who are well trained to come in and support them with strategic planning, with all the things that you're trying to do yourself. And I learned quickly that hey, wait, those guys are from San Diego and they're up here and they're totally fresh. They have no skin in the game. They have no emotions on who's losing things. They are just there to put out the fire. You need to get people to help you get back to running, get the school up and running and supporting your kids. In the restore stage, which I hear you're kind of tiptoeing into, you cannot have victims teaching victims. Your teachers will be extremely traumatized, and you cannot have them in front of students traumatized. And Casey will talk more about that, but we learned quickly, you want to get your teachers to be around your kids, but they're going to need a lot of support before they flip on a switch. I got one district that went back this week after about 12 days, and it's a disaster. The teachers are crying on the over and over. They're not able to get through like 45 minutes of some stuff. They just assumed the teacher said, I'm fine, I want to see my kids, but they were not prepared to teach children with when they lost their entire town and all the things that go with that. There's a one in here about the student rights. All of your students who have been evacuated qualify for McKinney Vito. They're homeless. So I don't know what you guys do, but I've turned basic aid or districts that have high property taxes. Those days are gone. Those kids are all homeless. They're living in hotels, and they have rights, the same rights as a homeless child or a foster youth kid. And that's a hard one for districts to deal with, because what that means is a parent may choose to go to another district out of your area because they have to live somewhere else. And your job is to make sure those parents and kids know they have federal rights to schooling no matter where they are as homeless children. And there's a whole plethora of other things. I don't know how you guys deal with homeless there, but we've seen districts try to not take someone in, let's say, because they say their school is full and all that crap. They have FERPA rights as homeless children. And this is just if they were evacuated temporarily. They are homeless status for the year. And you should use that to help get more services. I know you guys are doing a lot of media. Just remember the national media is much more skilled and I think a little easier to deal with. They're actually way better to interview than some kid who's your local media. But mentally, you have to prepare for dealing with the national media, because your goal is to tell your story, what happened. And Todd, you did a great job. Brett, you guys did a great job. So you're dialed in on that. But use that national media to help get you long-term donations. That's important. We got our kids back in front of those teachers within 3 weeks. And I have to admit, as the person responsible for getting 32,000 kids back to school, that was a mistake. I should have waited till we did it from November. We got it back December 8th. I should have waited till after Christmas. We were too traumatized with that big of a disaster. You're going to have to make the call, but definitely we know the best trauma is that child seeing their teacher in school first. And with distance learning, you can do some other creative things, but COVID does intensify this whole issue tenfold, really. And I think, but think about that. Getting the kids back to school is so important for their trauma, not for their academics. You're not worried about English and math and anything else. You're worried about emotional support for everyone. And Casey, again, will touch base on that. just what we learned. You guys are going to go through one of the greatest journeys of your life. I know the word greatest is tough, but it will make you a different person. It'll make you much more humble, and your community will never be the same. And Simon Sinek says, the great leader trainer, just move on from that. It's like when technology came in, some businesses died and others grew and be better. You're going to be better for this in the long run. Your school's going to be better. You're going to utilize this to jumpstart your school long run. And truly, if you do this right, you're really going to be a savior. But don't do it alone. See my last bullet? Don't do it alone. Okay. Just remember, it's a long process. Oh, the hardest thing I think that districts deal with, and you're going to lose families. I working with Happy Camp up by you guys in Oregon. Everyone wants to come back. It's not going to happen. They don't have insurance. They lost their house. They lost their job. So you have to prepare for that. Sometimes letting go is the best thing for the family. It's not always about just your school. That's a very difficult emotional thing because those are your kids. But you're going to have to prepare your people for that, including yourself, that you're going to lose some students because of their family situation. Just last, the restore, I'm not going to get into the restore stage. Paradise is going through that. They built, how many homes in the first year? 12? We were the only game in town. They only built 12 houses in the first year. And that was towards 11th and 12th month. It's not an easy process. People say we're going to rebuild the town right away. They have no clue how hard it is to deal with FEMA and everything else. Okay, let me give you 10 quick tips and then give it over to Casey. I told you the first one. Your number one job when a tragedy hits is make sure all students and staff are safe and communicate that regularly. And you're going to hear they're bouncing around from hotel to house to four families are living on a ranch. Get to know that intimately as the leader. That's very important for your own self-health and also everyone else. There's a lot of rumors during fires. I'm sure you guys are dealing with this. Only do what is confirmed, I think, through your what we call CAL FIRE, sheriff, OES, but don't listen to Facebook or someone goes, I drove up there. We had someone drive up to Paradise, go, how's my school? Gone, 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 gone. And in reality, only like 1 or 2 of the 5 that she mentioned were gone. Think what that did to that school community during trauma in the beginning. So unless you see it eyeball to eyeball or get it straight up from an agency, be careful about relying on hearsay or parents said, oh, I saw the picture of this, and because you just don't know. All right. You need to get help from non-district people, right? Everyone struggles doing this because we're small districts and we're not loaded like LA Unified or Portland or whatever your big things are, right? FEMA will pay for, and Casey can talk about it, FEMA's will pay for a person to help to run your school while you're doing this work. FEMA will pay for your mental health support. They'll pay for other people like that. I'll have Casey talk about that, but they basically struggled the first 3 weeks to get help, and I had to personally bring people in to help them, right, as the county soup. So, Todd, when I hear you're dealing with donations and all that, no way. You should not be doing that. You need to bring in a donations coordinator. You need to bring in somebody who does your FEMA work, and you need to be somebody who's going to run your school. And again, I'm not saying you don't do that, but I'm going down to Santa Cruz specifically because the guy is struggling, and I'm bringing in fresh people personally to help him because he's pushing back on that, but he's struggling. So FEMA will pay for it. You're not going to get paid overnight, but over the next year or 2, they'll reimburse you for all these services now that you're a federal disaster. And I know as a small district leader, it's hard. Like, what do you mean I can get help? Yeah, you can get help, and you need to do that because it's super important. And then community updates, you just got to do a daily bulletin. And the best thing to do is drop something like every day at 3, drop an update on Facebook or something. I know that's hard. You're busy. But it's really important because people are scrambling. If they know, hey, at 3 o'clock, Todd's gonna, Brett's gonna post something, or Matt's gonna post something, whatever. They look for that. They look for that a lot. Yeah, donations are the biggest pain in the butt. You're gonna get all these people that are so nice, they're going to give you used clothing, and all of a sudden you find out you think you're a Goodwill store. You guys are not a social service. Get your nonprofits to help you with this, but get somebody you trust to handle all donations. They should be documenting who's sending things in, so you can send thank you notes back to them. And people do crazy gift cards and cash come flowing in, and you don't want to have anybody create any type of fraudulent situation. You stay away as the leaders from those donations as far as handing them out. Your job, again, is to get the kids back to school. We had a disaster our first 10 days. So I'm not saying you're, disaster, but as the truckloads kept coming up, we pulled that away from the school people and brought in someone. All donations go here. This person documents everything, and there's an accountability system where it goes. I'm going to tell you, people steal when they're desperate, and you'll get bags of things, whether they're gift cards or cash, and things just end up. And I don't think the word is really stealing. I think they just actually have the goodness heart start handing things out. And then someone calls you and goes, hey, I sent over $200 in gift cards. Where'd it go? Oh, you gave it, So they like to know you handed it to a teacher and it's documented. Again, you guys don't feel guilty if you haven't done that. We screwed up the first 10 days. And then finally, someone told me, hey, you better get somebody to document all that. Just a couple of the quick things. Who is the true key people to get things done? Everybody and their mom, including me right now, is telling you, I'll help you. Find out who really is going to help you. Who are the key decision makers at the fire, at the State Department, and be a pain in their ass if they're not following through. We're having some things slip because everybody's busy with COVID, and these people are not getting help from our State Department. So we're gonna set something up that's done. And I told the leaders, I don't care if you scream at me that I'm not following through. If you need something to get back on your feet, that's your job as a good leader. Update your website. If you want donations, show pictures of the fire. That was a hard thing for me to do. I didn't want to show any more trauma. But once we put a picture of the burning bus in Paradise, we had millions of dollars in donations. And that's not our style, you guys. But people are going to go to your website. If they see everything's fine and dandy, then you can deal with that. We have union leaders. I don't know if you guys have unions there, but I would contact them. Usually they have financial support for your people, and they're also critical for you to help move things forward. Check on how they're doing. I don't know how you guys do unions, but whoever's helping your employees out, contact them and have a regular communication with them through text. So I don't know what your boards are like, but sometimes boards are getting in your way. This is not the time, right? So we had a lot of superintendents pass resolutions, if you'd like one, that gave them full authority to make all decisions during the crisis. And that applied to COVID, by the way, too. So depending on your relationship with your board, I would highly recommend that. Casey's board gave her full power to make decisions and not have to check in for board votes or anything. Board will come in when there's more things to take care of, like FEMA contracts and contracts with facilities, et cetera. As I told you, know your students' rights, know that they're not homeless, and that's a big plus for you to get some support. And that's mine. And let me get to Casey's, because I know we're running, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing pretty well. So this is Casey. She's the superintendent. 46 of her 48 staff lost their homes. Pretty much all of the children there, the 250, lost their homes. I don't have the exact number. What was it of your 240 kids? How many lost their homes? Oh, every kid lost their home. So all 240. That's the way it was in that Paradise fire. It was so traumatic. And she's been going around to these districts talking about, now that she's 2 years into it, she's going to kind of show you a backwards map, what you're going to be dealing with personally and with your staff's trauma. And I find this, 2 graphics she have is gold. And this is what we learned specifically dealing with a catastrophic wildfire. So,
okay. Hi, you guys. I'll go quick. I have so much to share with you, but you have something called fire brain. So there's only so much that you can actually comprehend right now. So we'll definitely come back and walk you through some more details in the coming weeks. But my name is Casey. I run two charter schools in Paradise, one completely burned to the ground. The other one is still standing. We are still not back in that school yet because of the damage that was done. So the water lines, the electricity, the septic system, all the debris that was all around it, falling trees, all of that. We will get back in there next school year. So, and then we're going to keep the temporary school that we built in the nearby Chico. So there, I'm going to share my screen with you here really quickly. There's just a couple of things I think will be helpful for you and put some things in perspective. So it's very interesting because everybody in your community is not necessarily a victim and didn't lose their house. However, there's this circles of impact graphic that I want to show you. Regardless of what circle you're actually in, you all are in trauma, various degrees of trauma. So if you can't read this exactly, the epicenter of this circle is the direct victims, the people who have lost their homes. The next circle in blue is the family and the loved ones of people who've lost their homes or neighbors. And then the service providers are in the red. So that are counselors, first responders, the people who come in to help, and then your whole greater community. And in Paradise, it really was all of Butte County. Now, none of these are worse than the others. Everybody is in trauma, but you have a varying degrees of fatigue based on what circle you're in or how many of these circles you are in. So many of you are in all of them. I had a hard time have been in all of them myself when I would see somebody from a neighboring town who didn't lose their house be more emotional and cry and be more upset than I was. And I couldn't wrap my head around that. That is because everybody in those circles are going to face and deal with trauma and have a different impact. So just be aware of that and be careful with everybody. The other thing that was very helpful from the Santa Rosa Tubbs fire, they had been a year out when they came to visit us, and they were still traumatized by the smoke and the ash that were in the air because of our fire. They went back into trauma just from that. And I was like, oh no, we are not doing this for a whole year. But we did, and you don't have a choice, you have to. This comes from the US Department of Health. This is typical phases of disaster. And actually, we've been talking about how this actually applies to COVID already. So your community was probably in this phase of disaster with COVID anyways, probably feeling right here, like in this disillusionment phase. And now you've just entered this new disaster right here, the impact of your fire. What happens with the donations and everybody's coming together and you're building these new relationships and seeing support that you didn't know you had. You are in this heroic phase right now, believe it or not. You actually, and we can look back and see this, even though we felt completely overwhelmed. We did have a sense of, we're going to do this, we're going to get through this, and we did. So you should have that feeling. And this honeymoon phase, and then you are going to, and this was why this was so important to us, we would be going and all of a sudden I could see my whole entire community like crashing. Like, why all of a sudden is everybody giving up? And then we looked back to this phases of disaster. It's like, oh, this is based on research. That's natural. This is what's going to happen. We kept keeping our eye on this prize over here and added something to it that we researched and found out about post-traumatic growth, knowing that if you actually have a trauma right here and you go through all of this in a really healthy way with a community, recognizing tools that will help you like overcome it, you actually can come out after, like what Tim talked about, after your disaster, actually more empathetic, more creative, have a greater sense of purpose. And that is what we actually experiencing in Paradise right now. So this time right here happened when we started realizing we couldn't actually get back into the homes that were standing, that when we actually went back to the community, we didn't recognize it, that it didn't feel good to be there because it didn't look good. It looked like a war zone, really. This is when we had more families deciding they were moving away. So it just kept going loss after loss after loss. This was really, really hard. But know that you're going to come to this point right here. This was when we started, we opened up our new temporary school site and we all came back together. These pieces right here, like this was our our year celebration, we called it, but people had a really hard time leading up to that, and some people were really upset about it, and some people were relieved. Right here was like the second Christmas where we all realized we didn't have Christmas ornaments and all of that, and yeah, you saw everybody go down again. But then the new year, we really started pulling out of it, and you will too. I do want to tell you that we still, and this is a year and a half after our fire, still have a whole mental health team that we developed that we absolutely cannot let go of. So that's a coordinator, a mental health coordinator, just to coordinate the services for everybody and the providers. We have a crisis counselor. We have a post-traumatic, a trauma counselor specifically, and a school psychologist. And they are, and I only have a school of 230 students. And that is for my students and my staff. And we have needed that and will continue to need that. A lot of that was paid for by FEMA grants. So, and these are more details that we'll get into later, but your insurance company is going to pay for the damage for your things. FEMA will pay for support for you, mental health supports, all of those other people that you need to bring in to help you. We paid an attorney, my attorney came and walked and held my hand for the first 3 weeks actually, and FEMA ended up paying that bill. So we can talk to you a little bit more about those things, but I want you to know what you're in for.
Hey, I'm glad that you guys are federal, but I also feel sorry for you. FEMA is a pain in the butt, and you should, you know, what we did. We didn't know what FEMA was, how it works. You know, we kind of we evacuated because of that dam up there one time and got some FEMA money. But you have to find somebody who can take over your FEMA work. It is so anal retentive. It's like a Title I audit from hell. But it secures you a ton of money. So you should be documenting all the things you're doing now with the forms they use, and just find yourself someone you trust that loves paperwork, loves to battle government agencies, and get the right person. I will tell you, of the 12 districts we have, I have maybe 2 that have now assigned a FEMA coordinator, and they're 2-3 weeks in, and it's killing me, and because they don't listen. But there's no way. Casey never went to a FEMA training or did a FEMA piece of paperwork. Your job as the leader, as the head of that district, is to give them a new hope and vision and get them back to school. Let me have Mike chime in here real quick, because Mike helped us from a state perspective. And with your school boards, talk about what his role was, because he played really a critical role to get us back on our feet.
So hi, Mike Walsh, and so I was the California School Board Association president when we had all these fires in Butte County. I'm still on the Butte County board, and so now we're about to deal with all this again with some of the fires around me. I live in Oroville. So I'm right where the fire came right down to the Oroville Dam. And so what I learned is there's a couple thoughts. Your school board members, they're elected, okay? And you can see Tim's arm in there. There. So your school board people, they are elected, and they feel like they need to do something. The role for them it was advocacy when they got elected. It's advocacy now. It doesn't change. But the challenge with it is they're not quite sure how to advocate. So a couple things that are critical. Tim already said, as you're sending information out, the board needs to know how that information goes out so they don't create more confusion. Everybody knows them, especially in small areas. They're going to run into them at the post office, the store, wherever. And there's going to be the moments where they're in tears and hugging. I was in tears nonstop. But people kept asking me, so what is going on? What are the schools doing? That fixed it. What are the schools doing? And your board needs to know that, but they don't need a special board meeting for it. They just need to know however you're communicating that information, that's where they go as well. So they can make sure that whoever in the public didn't get that information knows exactly what's going on. Tim talked about tell your story. That's part of the longer term recovery. And this is where board people become very important about how do they advocate long term, because everybody starts to recover, they figure out where they're going to live, what they're doing, and eventually life moves forward. And people kind of forget what the struggle was. This is where your board members become very important. I'm on the Oregon School Board website right now, and just saw someone here Craig Pruitt, he's part of the board and connected to the Oregon School Board Association. He should be having a conversation right now with the legislative arm, whoever the government relations folks are for the Oregon School Board Association. Craig should be talking to them now, because they are sitting in a place where they're not under the trauma necessarily, and they have a sense of, here's the legislation that we're going to need to be moving, here's the proclamations that are being made, here's the stuff that will give us the funding. Craig should be in that conversation, because he's the one that should be getting in front of the legislation later on and doing the reminders about, here's what's going on. That became my role. Suddenly I'm I'm across the street at the state capitol. I'm having conversations with assembly members. I'm having conversations with whomever it is. But it's me, my job is to go tell the story, go advocate for my schools. So when Casey needed something, and if it wasn't moving fast enough, there was another member of our Charter Schools Association. Her and I were working together in conversations about what we can do for our kids, period. It was no longer a conversation about those charter folks, us public school folks. It was literally, and not even a private school, it was kids in our county. What do we need for their recovery? What do we need for our teachers? And so it was, my job was about advocate, but it was a very clear role on who I was supposed to be advocating with. And your board presidents, keep in mind, this isn't their full-time job. Right? The school board president for a very small school district in Santa Cruz, he and I were talking as Tim connected him with me. He said, Mike, I didn't sign up for this. And fortunately, he followed it with, but it's landed on my time. So what do I need to do to take this on? Because they have other full-time jobs. So it's a real critical thing. And I talk to school boards about this all the time. You hired a superintendent to run things, stay out of their way. Let them run it and just find out from them what's the partnership around, how do I go advocate? What do I need to go do for you? How do I support? And so being clear with them and communicating that, it's critical. But keeping them informed so that they don't create more confusion is the absolute most important thing that you can do for them. And just be clear with them that this is what you need them to do so that you can now pivot and get back to the work of trying to recover. Because Tim's right, you've got so many things to do. You don't have time to run the school, babysit the school board, and try and recover and deal with FEMA and all the other things you're dealing with. School board members are important because the community knows who they are. They see them as a mouthpiece for the school district. So I just want you to help them not create more confusion and just still continue to advocate. Because remember, they're in trauma, they're in shock, they don't know what to do either. And that for me was the biggest challenge. Was these are my friends, these are my family members. I still get emotional about it when I think about it because I know those kids personally. And so in that moment, as I've told the story over and over and over, it just keeps coming back to, for school board members, they just need to be clear on what's going on and how do they get that information, because everyone in the community sees them and they are going to ask them. You don't want them giving out confusing information. And when it comes to, again, like I said, for Craig Pruitt, I would have him working hand in hand on the phone with the Oregon School Boards Association and their government relations so that they can start to figure out what are those other pieces that you need so that you can start to recover, especially with the financial, and how are we going to be held harmless, and how do we continue to recover from this. And finally, I would tell you that whole Stockdale paradox, I think the way that Brene Brown shares it, she calls it have gritty faith and deal with the gritty truth. What are the facts? And just be really clear with everyone. It is a difficult time. We will recover. It will take time. And what you heard from Casey is critical. What you've heard from Tim, it all works together. But you've got to be very clear with the board, their job, and not to get confused with them wanting to save the district. They will want to, but their role isn't to go in and do the work. So that, and by the way, my wife and I were already planning. My heart's breaking for all of you. We're on our way up to Medford on Friday night. We were supposed to come up and meet my son to pick up our grandkids to bring them back down to their mother. And so I'm coming through, and I got to tell you, it's the trauma comes back to me, and my heart breaks for all of you. So if there's something that any one of us, including myself, can do, please let us know. I'm happy to work with your school board members and support them. My phone numbers, calls, everything, whatever it takes to support them, to help them understand why their role is critical, having been a school board guy who's gone through it. So if there's anything I can do, please let me know.
Tomorrow, I'm going down to Santa Cruz to do an intervention on a superintendent who's, this happens all the time. His dog died and his father had a stroke right after the fire. This is what happens. It's part of the whole crisis situation. So I'm getting him some help. So I asked him, what is he doing today? He's handing out hotspots as the superintendent, driving all over town to hotels, because that's what a small school district soup does. That's not what he should be doing in a crisis. The other guy, Toby Waite, who lost his entire town in Big Creek, Fresno, what is he doing? He has an interview with Fox News Network. He's heading over to FEMA. He's doing high-level things, and he's already hired an interim principal to run the school. They're coming back. Toby stepped up, so I know, and Casey mentioned all the things you're going to get paid for by FEMA. You also need to let your board know, I don't have time to do a posting. I don't have time to like do a whole bunch of, we're going to bring people on as a timesheet, get things going. And then the last thing, this is very important, and Mike was instrumental in this, is we got Paradise and we will get these districts. They maintain their funding by the state government. I don't know how you guys are funded. We got that for Paradise for 4 years, which is very unusual. These will probably get 2. That takes a lot of relief off you guys to say, hey, for 2 or 3 years, we're not going to lose funding, even if we lose half our families, right? That's what your legislators and your local officials will do, is go, hey, Todd lost his entire town, but he's not going to lose the funding because it's supposed to help people keep their jobs and get you guys back on your feet. And we were very excited that the California School Board Association and other associations fought tooth and nail, and that's locked in now for all schools that deal with fires. They keep their funding for a couple, 3 years until they get back on their feet. So that's what I've got, you guys.
One more thing
I gotta jump on a call with the governor. You guys will love this. We're doing, looks like we're doing daily COVID testing in schools. So I know COVID's so far out of your range right now, but the one thing I do feel for all of you is the way we recovered mostly in Butte County, we were hugging and meeting each other, right? It was like face-to-face love, and I feel really bad that that's not what you really can do these days, like the Zoom call. I'd fly up there in a heartbeat if it went for what's going on here, but that was a big deal. Let Mike in. I gotta go. Hey Matt, I hope people got something out of it, and if they need more help, we're here, man. We got a lot of people that have been through this, and we go on for a lot longer. Whatever you guys need.
The last thing that I completely forgot to mention was, especially with your board, there's a conversation that comes up about who has the power to do what. Utilize resolutions. You're in a temporary situation, and the board, you don't want to back yourselves into a permanent decision for a temporary problem. Really utilize resolutions, because you can put dates on those, and it'll help the board understand that you're not trying to usurp all their power. You need power right now to make decisions right now. You don't have time to always call the board and have a meeting to ask for permission to do something. Utilize resolutions that have end dates on it so the board understands, so the board will also further support you, because again, you need as much credibility in this moment as possible. So utilize resolutions for a lot of the temporary problems and fixes that you need, that are, so you don't end up backing yourselves into a permanent problem for a temporary, whatever that's supposed to be. But don't back yourself into it. Now I'm confused. So there you go. So that's my advice.
I've spoken with some of our state reps and senators, and actually yesterday at the end of the day, I was on a call with Cindy Hunt, who's ODE's chief of staff and attorney. And I'll just tell you the things that I laid out to her. And she said every one of them now is on their list and that they are meeting with to address, and one of which is the enrollment, kind of an ADM guarantee for us. That's in the works. Let's see, I also asked about relief on the COVID rules, because I told her, I said, you know what, here's the deal. I'm bringing kids in. we're doing it. Like the need is so significant, and I'm not bringing them back to full-time school, but whatever the need is, if it's counseling or if it's supports, if it's meals, whatever it is, we're bringing them in. So we're gonna need some relief on the COVID restrictions. Because I honestly, it's weird to say, but that's the least of their concerns right now. And on a strange note, I don't know if any of your communities are affected by this, but we just passed a school bond. And I also have on their radar that they need to now, while the iron's still hot, they need to be looking at some sort of bond guarantees on us. If communities take 10 years to rebuild and values decrease that significantly, that's what pays back these bonds. So they're also addressing it right now too, is to see what they can do to support communities that have school bonds out there. So that stuff is in the works, know that, but man, any support or any of your legislators too that you can get rolling on any of those would also be really helpful. But it was an optimistic phone call, but of course they won't give us any guarantees.
Well, and Todd, you and I are mirroring. I mean, we passed a $70 million bond 2 years ago. So, I mean, that's you know, S&P Global sent us a, you know, kind of warning letter, and you know, Carol Samuels, she's basically saying, don't worry about that yet. Let's let the dust settle and see. But that is a definite worry for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The Paradise Unified School District passed a bond right before the fire as well. And Mike and I were just saying we don't really have the details on that. I don't think that it worked out well for them. But Tom Taylor is the current superintendent for Paradise Unified School District, and he is right now talking with other school districts around the state, comparing different things. So you should definitely reach out to him about that and what they're doing with it. Okay. I will say that we really need to put a list of things together that you might think about using FEMA dollars for. One thing that we didn't realize that we were actually going to get all this funding back. It took a year and a half for us. Actually, we just got it in June. But if I would have known that we were going to get that reimbursed, I would have hired somebody to come in and hold my CBO's hand, because we had millions. I mean, we have a $1.5 million budget normally. $4 million went through my organization last year because you rebought everything. We have all this insurance money coming back through. She's trying to keep track of receipts on just our regular operations, and now all of this additional stuff. She was running bills and paying stuff out of her car for the first 3 weeks, you know, so somebody else to come in and do that. And then I would have hired a full-time substitute just to tap out my teachers as they were supporting kids, because they have a whole mess of things they need to do too for their own personal sake. A couple of the schools in the area, we shared notes after we got our FEMA money back, and we should have done that beforehand and copied what everybody else was, because I probably could have, I pulled down $880,000, and it probably could have been much more than that if I would have just known. So we need to put a list together for you of some ideas.
I was hoping for the exact same. I was about ready to ask you guys, that would be one of the best things, is if you could just come up with a list of everything that a general list of everything that you did get for you reimbursed with FEMA dollars, or the things you wish you would have done. Because that's already some of the stuff that's rolling through my head, is like, we've already been told United Way, you know, they have up to 100 trailers that they could get up to us for temporary housing. There's nowhere for them to go. So the city's like, can we put them on your district grounds? The only place I have would be like my football fields and baseball fields, which would ruin them. So like, can I assume then that in a year or so, I can also get FEMA dollars then to repair the damage to those athletic fields? Because I would do it in a heartbeat. That's some of the stuff that like I'm still processing through. So to know what these dollars can be used for would be really helpful. Yeah, and it's really hard because you're in fire brain, so you're not. I mean, you can just get through one day and then the next day. It's so hard to be thinking about 2 years when you're reopening. There's 2 FEMA grants. One is called Project Serve, and I don't know what that stands for, but that's basically just to keep you going this school year. Another one is called Project Restart, and that is for everything you need, like to reopen your schools and get going the following year. So you're thinking about those 2. One thing that a friend of mine pulled down was a huge signing bonus for every single one of his teachers, just to stay and not leave, and then to re-sign again the following year, which I thought was brilliant. So let me work with some of my other colleagues and give you a good list on that.
Anything that you can do so that your staff That's one less thing they need to worry about, right? Oh, will I have a job next month? Will I have a job next school semester? Anything you can do so that they no longer have that fear and they can now focus on one less trauma, one less part of the trauma is critical, because otherwise they're constantly thinking about, where am I going to live next month? Where am I going to work next year? Especially knowing that everyone always expects all of the kids to come back. It doesn't happen. A friend of mine is an automotive, he sells cars, and he said he had, when the Paradise Fire happened, he had so many people coming in because they lost their cars, and so many people coming in, and they were determined they were going to move back in. Then they got their checks from the insurance, and they just decided, like Casey was saying, it takes forever to get things back on track where you're building. And for a lot of them, they just said, you know what, it's just too much trauma. It's too much chaos. We've decided we're going to move elsewhere. And so teachers are starting to think about the fact that some of these kids, or eventually they'll start to think about, some of these kids aren't coming back. And so that's when they start to worry, am I going to have a job? And so anything you can do to settle that concern for them allows them to focus more on each other and the kids. And it just helps stabilize things.
Just one other thing is also just for you Oregon guys, Cindy Hunt said, yeah, all of the families who are displaced by fire are McKinney-Vento. So she said that's like for sure, we can keep them all. So that's already confirmed that, yeah, it doesn't matter where they live now, they're still our student if they want to stay with us. So that was a positive piece.
The thing about McKinney-Vento is that's the thing that's going to allow you to get around the COVID thing too, because you have super, super high need kids. It's going to let you serve them in different ways. We didn't realize how much that McKinney-Vento was actually going to support and help our kids. So just play that card every single chance that you get. The other thing is, as you lose students, your staff will think, well, they don't need me anymore. You need twice as many staff, I will tell you, to get through the next 2 years. So you need to be thinking about who you can keep, every single one of them, no matter how many kids you lose. And you're going to need other people to come on too, because your kids and your staff are going to need a ton of support. One thing BCOE really pushed hard on us leaders was that we had to take care of ourselves and then our teachers first. You know, we want to take care of the whole community and our students and all of this. We have to make sure that we're all right, and then we need to make sure that our teachers are okay. Every single thing you can do to make sure that your teachers are in a good, or getting into a good place and getting the support they need, and then they are going to support your kids. So you do everything you can to take care of your teachers.
All right, I know we're a little bit over time, and I would offer this up. I know that especially when I think about Todd and Brent and Tiffanie, that there's the fire brain is probably it's gonna come to you later today. Oh God, I wish I would have asked X, Y, or Z. And what we'll look to do is kind of set up a single point of contact for the collective us on this call with Tim, and I'll work with Tim, but kind of have two single points of contact to get this kind of information and the questions that you needed answered. The other thing that I would share, and just we didn't necessarily create this context at the beginning of this call, but many of the people that are on the call are actually part of the Oregon Rural Schools network that we collectively run. It's kind of collectively who we are, and they're retired administrators. And one thing that's kind of, I think I've heard 4, 5, or 6 different times is you got to have externalized support. I would offer, and Brett and Tiffanie and Todd, we can have a little bit of a conversation offline and potentially electronically, to be, for the rural network, to be that point of contact with Tim Taylor and then ultimately Casey and Mike and the different connections, just so that there's an infrastructure of support and connection, really to people today who have done an amazing job of just sharing your own heartache, your own lessons learned, et cetera. Mike and Casey, you guys have been amazing. And I know I appreciate it. I know the collective appreciated it on the call. With that, is there any kind of, and I'm going to leave it to Casey and Mike, any last kind of words of wisdom before we sign off?
I just want to reassure you that we have a foundation called the Rebuild Paradise Foundation that is actually working, pulled donations, and then worked with community members to go in together to clean up lots really efficiently, to rebuild really efficiently, to survey together and all of that. And that foundation is working with your community leaders up there in Oregon already. So know that that's also running on the side as we're talking about schools.
Brent, double check. I sent you a text, so make sure I send it to the right Brent Barry. So if anyone need me to have a conversation with a board member, I am totally happy to do that. But the last thing I will tell you is that I've been to 3 different conferences with another county superintendent from Sonoma, and we were talking about how to be prepared for the disasters, etc. And the first time I was telling the story, it was in front of county board members at a fall conference, and I hadn't cried at all at any time in the story until I started telling the story, and it just came out of me. And then a couple months later, I'm at the California School Boards conference, and I'm on stage and telling the story like a 2-year-old again. And then 3 months later, not quite as much. I only went through 1 box of Kleenex instead of the Kleenex in my sleeves and everything else. My point being, you're human, you have a heart, you are incredibly empathetic people. That's why you continue to stay in the job as long as you have and reach the level that you've reached. Give yourselves permission every now and then to feel what's going on, and just go walk over someplace, and to heck with COVID rules, grab somebody, hug them, and just let the tears come out. Just let it be. Don't deny it. Let it come out. Take a deep breath and then get back to work. But Casey's right. Take care of yourselves and take care of your teachers, and it will cascade from there, and the kids in the community will be fine. But just be loving and be yourselves. You'll be all right. And then call us if you ever need anything.
That's awesome. I want to first thank you guys again. I do want to acknowledge Jerry. I love the fact that you kind of laid out a little bit of who you are in terms of the chat room. Jerry is somebody that has been working with Tim and invited it to listen in and be a part. And as you can see, a potential resource specific to our communities that have been impacted. I can't thank you enough. I mean, again, I've known Tim a long time, and I knew that as soon as he got the text, he'd pick up the phone and give me a call, and had no idea of he told me, he says, these 2 are amazing. They're doing amazing work. They've got a heart for kids and a heart for community, but unfortunately have the experience to help us figure out how to support specifically Phoenix Talent and Santiam Canyon and a handful of other schools in Oregon. So thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. And for everybody on the call, connected to the Oregon Rural Schools Network, and I'd say this to Brent and Tiffanie, we're going to put our heads together very quickly about how we might be able to create an infrastructure to support you, if only to be a direct link to our friends in California who've shared with us today. So we'll dial back on that. We'll put our heads together later today and come back to you. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.